Bill Gifford and Dr. Peter Attia wrote the book Outlive. If you're interested in longevity, today is the episode for you. I sit down and chat at length about health span and living longer and healthier with Bill Gifford. Bill, a huge welcome to the Lead on Purpose podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a joy to have you. I mean, you are the world leader when it comes to longevity. You and Dr. Peter Attia put together this incredible book, Outlive. I've seen it on so many airport tables. I've seen it in clients' backdrop of their bookshelves. I've seen
Amazing.
it in every bookstore I've been in New Zealand, Australia, the UK. I mean, it's just incredible. You've sold over 1 million copies and it's changing lives.
Yeah, and that's really the most gratifying thing. Seeing it in the airport obviously is great, but when I hear from people that they've changed a habit or they've changed some part of their life or they've completely changed their life because of the book and they're on a better trajectory, I just love hearing that.
Yeah, me too. And I think just, you being so deeply researched, what you say, you've actually done the due diligence to make sure that it matches up with how it can impact a human's health span and lifespan. So I guess to get the ball rolling very, very tactically, across all the research that you've done, what are the top 2 daily habits that consistently show up in people who live longer and stronger lives?
Right. I think the most obvious one is exercise, but I'm going to go a little deeper and say movement. So you don't have to go to the gym every single day, but you do need to move in some way, shape, or form. So walking, right, on the most basic level, walking up hills, walking up stairs, running, doing some sort of endurance, longer duration movement. But even just getting up and down from your desk and walking up and down the stairs in your house and moving around has an effect. They've done studies where they put accelerometers on people, and they found that the people who are fidgeting actually do better than the people who are still and sedentary. And we all know, right? We know people who they don't move, and then there's people who do move, and the people who move do better. So that's number one, right?
That's
So
amazing.
not just exercise, movement. And
Mm.
then I think the second one I would have to say, and this is hard for me because I'm not a great sleeper, but sleep, I think, is pretty clearly the second sort of linchpin to living a long, healthy life. And also, you know, we all know when you sleep well at night, you're a better person the next day, right?
Yeah,
You're
less grumpy.
nicer, you're happier, you're not grumpy, you get along with your family, you perform better at work. But also, weirdly, and this was a surprise, it affects your metabolic health. So even a crappy night of sleep can sort of nudge you down the road to insulin resistance.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a surprise.
That's mind blowing. Yeah. And if we
Yeah.
look at both of those, so movement and sleep, I mean, common sense is not always common practice, right? But if we
Oh yeah.
look at movement, so I live on a hill. It's on a crater rim of an old volcano. I'm up and down the hill most days with the dogs. So there's basic
Awesome.
movement going on. But when you talk about walking, people are like, it's not exercise. But when
Yeah.
we get up to, say, 10, 12, 15,000 steps a day, I certainly think there's some benefits. But do you see any numbers in terms of what people should be hitting? Is tracking our steps and all that stuff good or bad? Or
Everybody's different, right? So, my mom is 83, and she, I just visited her at her home, and we busted out a mile and a half, 2 mile walk around the neighborhood. So
amazing.
that was awesome. But, not everybody can do that when they're 80 or whatever, or when they're 50. So everybody's different. And I think putting a flat, you know, a, we're sort of against these sort of blanket recommendations, one size fits all things. Like for some people, uh, 10,000 steps might be amazing. For the people running in the Boston Marathon yesterday, that's like, that's like breakfast, right?
Yeah. 100%. And in terms of the sleep side of it, what does good sleep look like? How do we know when we're getting better sleep? Are there certain things we can do to improve it?
I mean, it's how you feel when you wake up, right? But then sleep is really a mystery. You wish that you could just take a pill or switch the like, like on my on your computer, you just shut it down, right, for the night, and boop, you're just in blissful sleepville. But it doesn't work that way. And it's a complex mix of, did you get activity during the day? That's even related to it. How tired you are, right? What's your schedule? Are you in a different time zone? Did you just have an argument with your partner? Did you just watch a stressful news broadcast before you
Mm.
went to bed? Are you thinking about what you have to do the next day? Are you thinking about some difficult conversation you have to have, or some difficult conversation you had? So it's a whole bunch of things. For me, often it is lying awake thinking about, some writing project I've got going, or because I forget things, for something I forgot to do and should have done, and that I need to do the next day. All those kinds of things. And but really, it comes down to like getting yourself good and tired, right, by whenever you go to bed. And one thing I've found lately is going to bed earlier actually helps a bit. So I
Interesting.
just feel better. I give myself a bigger window of opportunity to sleep, and I feel better. Then I have like little rituals around, um, make a cup of tea at night. And somehow that, I think it's the warmth of the tea warms up your body. Then as your body cools down, there's some
Mm.
research that suggests that helps put you to sleep. So
Amazing.
taking a hot bath or taking a sauna and then cooling off, and that sort of helps you get into sleep mode.
Hey, James here. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you know about something. Look, I get asked to deliver keynotes and workshops for teams and companies all over the world, from London to Antarctica, from America to Australasia, from armies to small businesses to large corporates to sports teams. But I go in and deliver keynotes around the mindset of high performers, around the habits of high performers, about how we navigate change. If you would like me to come and speak to your team or speak at your conference or deliver a bespoke workshop, please get in touch with my team. Caroline at jjlaughlin.com will be able to help. I'll also make sure that we put that in the show notes. Interesting. That's amazing. And I'd love to look at that from your research, like the bookends of the day, the starting the day and the ending the day. There are people that have wrote books and courses on morning routines and evening routines. And you said a moment ago that often it's everyone's different and
Yeah.
everyone maybe operates. Some people are night owls, some people are morning larks. But from your research, are there specific rituals like you've just mentioned that could be helpful for people to have a better sleep and then also to start their day better?
Sure. I mean, starting with, I know you're, or I think I've got this right. You're a no alcohol person, but
That's right.
a lot of people are. And I love a glass of wine. Sometimes I love two glasses of wine. Sometimes I like three glasses of wine. So for me, it's like, let's chop out that last glass of wine, for example. You don't need it. And then you do sleep better and you feel better the next day. So
Mm.
boom, action reward. Um, Again, activity is key. Like 30 minutes, I think, is kind of like a good minimum. So I notice I sleep better even if I have a 30-minute Peloton ride, during the day. Like I sleep better.
Interesting.
Reading helps. You can read a long, boring book about longevity.
We've got it right here, folks, and it's
Yeah, it's 500
exceptionally.
pages.
It's not boring at all. It's fascinating, but yeah,
Yeah, it
I
is.
like your humility.
Yeah, it's funny when I was writing the book with Peter, and especially the sleep chapter gave me a really hard time because I was reading about all the terrible things that happen to you if you don't sleep well, even increased risk of Alzheimer's disease, right?
Mm.
But also emotional dysregulation and poor performance at work. So I'd be lying there at night thinking about all this stuff, like, oh my gosh, I'm not sleeping and I'm gonna not be able to write tomorrow, and I'm going to have Alzheimer's disease in 10 years. Like, it was terrible. So, which brings me to my point, which is, and this is counterintuitive, because everybody's got their Oura ring, right? And their sleep tracker on their whatever, on their device. Like, don't obsess about it, right? So I had to break up with my Oura ring eventually. It gave me some useful information, but eventually I was getting like anxious about my score.
I did the
So that
same.
didn't work for me. So, and you feel like you're being watched, right? And
Mhm.
monitored. So, you know, so don't be anxious about not sleeping well enough. Eventually, it's self-correcting to a certain extent. You know how like if you fly to the States, right? If you fly transatlantic or whatever, and you don't get enough sleep, the next night you'll sleep better.
Of course.
And that's
In that
one way they treat insomnia is like they sleep restriction. They don't let people sleep, and then they get really tired, and then they have a great night of sleep.
Mm.
And then like, okay, that's what a good night of sleep looks like.
So we can create this by movement. And you're talking about 30 minutes. So is there
Minimum.
any minimum 30 minutes? Okay, so 30 to 90 minutes would be great. And do you think
Yeah.
there's any benefit to like pacing? So someone might go for a 10,000 step walk. Let's keep it basic on the walking front. Is it better to spread it out throughout the day in terms of your movement rather than one hit and done?
I like to have at least one sort of main course of movement in the day. Um, and that could be a longer walk. I have dogs, right? So a longer walk with the dogs can count, but that's a real baseline minimum. Um, yeah, to me, I feel better with like a 30 to 45 minute session of sort of consistent activity in some
Mm.
way.
I love it. And if we keep into the morning side of things, meditation, journaling, reading, cold therapy, movement, drinking certain things. Is there anything in there ritual wise that you do or that you've seen actually this can be conducive to a really good day?
Everybody talks about journaling in the morning, which I think maybe has its value. Um, but what about journaling at night? You can offload all those
Mm-hmm.
things you have rattling around in your head, your ideas for the next day. I do this in a sort of, listy way. I just write down some sentences about things that I'm going to try and tackle the next day, in writing. So maybe try journaling at night and you kind of unburden yourself and then you can kind of go to sleep with a clearer head.
I love it. And
Yeah.
this is
So
something
back to the morning, you know, get out of the house,
Mm.
get up, get out of the house, see the sun, move around. I'm not a big morning exerciser. Just I think I'm more of a night owl, maybe not just not a morning person, but getting out of the house, moving around, talk to some people, which I do on the dog walk again.
Brilliant.
That gets me going, and that little bit of exercise kind of um, this is not scientific, but I feel like it clears out the cobwebs physically and mentally
Mm.
um, to get me started. And sometimes I listen to a podcast,
That's cool.
or an audiobook or whatever. Yeah.
I love it. And you just do easing your way into the day, waking up, connecting with nature, connecting with
Yeah.
people, so then that you're ready to step into the day.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it. And in terms of nutrition. So nutrition obviously plays a big part in our health and longevity. So plant-based meat, we mentioned alcohol already. Is there anything in the morning that you go, yep, I like to start with this, or I intermittent fast? Any rituals on that front?
Anything but pancakes or
Pure
like a big
sugar.
baked thing. And, I love pancakes and I love maple syrup. But when I eat that for breakfast, which happens, every 2 months, I'll break down. I just feel like absolute crap by about 11 in the morning. So for me, it's got to be, um, it's probably eggs 5 days a week. And then, or it might be like some, full fat Greek yogurt with some fruit and maybe some granola, you know, but not the sugary granola, like the nut granola.
Yep.
Yeah. So kind of 4 days of eggs and 3 days of the of that. And, I get hungry, so I'm not a good faster. Um, it's interesting as okay. We can talk about fasting maybe later.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but yeah, I need to eat something in the morning. I need to have a solid cup of coffee or two, and I feel like coffee is underrated as a longevity drug.
Why is that? Tell me more about that.
Well, they used to think coffee was unhealthy, back in the day, but then they figured out that the people were sipping a cup of coffee in one hand and they had a cigarette in the other hand, or they were eating some crappy breakfast. And so it turns out, coffee is actually pretty well associated with living a longer and healthier life. I think it's beneficial for the liver.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a liver stimulant.
Interesting. And when we look
Yeah.
at coffee, so obviously we've got instant, we've got brew, we've got espresso, caffeinated, non-caffeinated. For you, what is it in the morning that you reach for?
Oh, I'm straight up drip. We
Yeah.
have a Chemex, and I feel like that gets you a pretty good. I love the taste of it. Like I love the taste of wine, but coffee has a better effect. Um, um, yeah, sometimes I mix it up. Funny story. Um, as Peter and I were about a year and a half into the book, I'm starting to think, well, end is in sight. I think we've got this pretty well under control. We just have to do a few more chapters on exercise, nutrition, sleep. That'll be easy. So Christmas time rolls around, and this really nice espresso machine shows up at my door from Peter. I was like, that's a nice gift, considering we're almost done. Then it was like, oh, okay, we're not done. And so what had happened was we had come up with a conception of the book that it was going to be very sciencey, very much the sort of middle chapters, which are about the chronic diseases, about the science of aging, about sort of changing the orientation of medicine to think more about the long term, all those sort of big ideas and big meaty subjects. We're like, okay, and the tactical stuff will only be like 5%. We'll just have a little bit of this and that on how to eat right, how to exercise. And it turns out that once we dove into those subjects, you know, they were so rich and so complicated, and there was just so much there that we needed to kind of dive into and explain for people, that they ended up being like close to half the book.
Wow.
Yeah, and
That's
so we
mind blowing.
got a lot of mileage out of that espresso machine.
I bet you did. And it's interesting, like when I look at the book, the reason I picked it up in the first instance was that I do want to live a longer life. I have dreams of maybe meeting a grandchild if I'm lucky. My kid's only 8, so who knows if he wants
Oh,
kids or not, but I would love to be a granddad one day. I need to be
yeah.
healthy. I need to be cognitively present. And I know I can't control everything in regards to those things, but there's a lot that I can influence. And this book to me seemed to be like a master key system for that. So longer's great, but health span we talked about at the start. So what's health span and lifespan? For someone going, what's the difference? How do we just define that for them?
Well, they overlap, but technically, sort of lifespan is obviously how long you live.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of the public health types sort of use that as a proxy for the health of a population, life expectancy. But it's really not, because we all know that there's a certain point at which you're you're sort of no longer healthy, right? In your as you age, and we've all seen parents and grandparents enter that period of life. So there's something called health span. And again, technically, health span is how long you stay free of disease, chronic disease, and disability,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so in the States, we don't do so well on these things, but it's probably about 66 right now. And and life expectancy is
Wow.
like 79, 80. So 14 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah. But then Peter and I were thinking about it and talking to some other people in the field, and we think that the two-dimensional definition of health span is really not sufficient. So we really want to give a sense of like are you not just free of disease and disability, but are you thriving, right? Are you capable? And are you content? So there's kind of three dimensions, and there's probably more. dimensions to these dimensions, but it's physical function, right? Um, cognitive function, right? Cognitive health. You know, you remember things, or you have executive function, or you're sharp. Um, and then the third part is sort of, you can call it emotional health, mental health. It's not really mental health. It's more like, are you content, right?
Mm.
Do you have a purpose? Do you look forward to the day when you wake up in the morning? Do you have a, like, as you talk about, do you have a priority for the day? Do you have something to do
Mm.
that's meaningful to you? Um, and so I think that's an important dimension of health span as well.
100%. And I love that there's those three dimensions to consider, because as a younger human, was always told cardio is everything. You know,
Oh yeah,
running, get into the treadmill, that's what'll give you a long, healthy life. And I'm thinking, I know a lot of runners that are in their 70s and they can't walk. Like their knees are
yeah,
shot, their
yeah.
hips are bad, their back. So I don't know if that's the answer. And so I'm hearing more and more often, I'd love to ask you about it with your research, but I'm hearing more often that muscle, building lean muscle mass, is a really big factor in living a longer and stronger life.
Yeah, so here's the way to think about it. You know, the cardio stuff is important.
Mm.
Um, that helps you live to 80, say. That lives you helps you live a longer life than somebody who doesn't do that stuff. But the strength stuff helps you survive being 80. And too many of us neglect that.
Mm.
Um, and too many people kind of, they just kind of keep doing the same thing. They keep whatever, they keep running and just running. And you know, running has a limit to it. Running's great when you're younger, right?
Mm.
But not everybody can run into their 50s, and maybe not everybody should, right? So find some lower impact thing to do. But at the same time, you have to be doing, and this is hard for me because I'm one of those endurance nerds. Find some way to build resistance into your routine, right? So I'm here in my office. Here, hold on. I have these I have these little like push-up handles.
I love it.
So they go on the ground and you grab them, you do a push-up.
I
So
love it.
after a call or whatever, I'll just crank out like 10 push-ups, whatever, 15, just a few, you know, just like get charged up,
Yeah.
you know, things like that. But the strength stuff helps you survive old age. And I'm trying to tell this to my mom, and she doesn't listen to me.
Mm.
So, you know,
Luck
it's
for
hard.
that.
It's hard to get people to do, you know?
Yeah, of course. And I think that when I think about muscle mass, I'm that's a physical thing that'll help me physically in my 80s and 90s. But is there a cognitive component too, in terms of when we build muscle mass, can it help prevent any of those neurological disorders?
Totally. And this was one of the kind of amazing little connections that we discovered while writing this book, you know, post espresso machine. Um, but we found some study that they measured like muscle strength and they charted it against risk of dementia and cognitive decline. And they found a really strong inverse relationship. So the people with the more muscle mass, more lean muscle mass, and you don't have to be muscle bound, you just have to have like some strength, right? The people with the strength, with a little more muscle mass, had a far lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So it was like a drug that delayed Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline. It was incredible.
Wow. That's mind blowing. How has
Yeah.
that impacted your personal relationship with strength training?
You know, I I try to do it. Like, you know, the good news is, you know, you don't have to do it like every day, right? You can do it like twice a week
Mhm.
and still get good results because, you know, the biggest gain with a lot of these things, especially around exercise, but also nutrition, is in going from doing nothing to just doing a little bit. So that first step is the thing that gives you like the biggest step gain. And then once you get into it, it's a little bit of like diminishing returns. You still get a return, but it's not as dramatic as that going from 0 days to 1 day.
Hmm. Interesting. So it can be
Yeah,
actually quite a manageable step for someone to commit to that and make a difference.
totally. Yep.
Amazing. I love it.
I've
It's
done it
interesting.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, just making that commitment to just one day, okay?
Yeah.
And then, okay, it feels good. I'm gonna go back.
I love that. That's amazing. And in your research, you know, I'm all about optimizing, trying to optimize my health. And so I found
Sure.
someone in the States to work with. He was like an advisor, used to work for the US Defense Force, for the Navy SEALs, and he was optimizing their health and understanding the science behind it. So we started working together, and he says, James, go and do these bloods. Here's a panel of bloods, go do them. And I'm obviously here in New Zealand. So I go to my doctor rolls their eyes and goes, are you kidding? I'm not sending you for those bloods. Like, what do you mean? You're fine. You're healthy. I'll send you for a total blood count. I'll send you for, I don't know, one other thing. And I
Yeah.
says, well, I want to do them all. He said, well, I'm not doing it. You figure it out yourself. So I went to a blood bank. You can actually, here in New Zealand, you can get them all done. You don't need a doctor's permission to do it. You just
Yes,
pay
sir.
for it
Here too.
separately.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think it's
Yeah.
important that we can. So all these markers started coming up mostly healthy, but there was a couple that were a bit unusual. Then I found a lump in my left pec not long after
Well,
this. And so we started realizing there's potentially some issues here. So about 2 years later, and a lot of trips to specialists, I had to go to the States for
okay.
an MRI because in New Zealand, currently, they won't let you self elect to get a full body MRI. They just won't let you do it. There's nowhere
Huh.
to do it. So I had to fly to LA, do a pre nuvo, look at the body.
Yeah.
And all I want to do, Bill, is actually prevent ill health. I want to prevent decline. But in New Zealand, that's not a priority. It's once you're sick,
Huh.
we'll look after you and try and
Yeah.
help you.
Classic. Yeah.
Totally. Is it the same in the States in terms of there's much more focus on the after you're sick rather than the prevention?
Yeah. It's we talked about this was actually the big idea of the book. Not that you should be doing push-ups every day, but it's really that. And Peter had been a disillusioned doctor who had left medicine and then went back to it eventually. But his goal, I think, he would like to change the way medicine is practiced. I mean, it's a grand goal, and he probably wouldn't admit to it, but I think that's what he really wants. And the reason is, our medical system is great for fixing whatever's wrong with you, like right now. So if you go out and break your arm, or you get a cut, or you get an infectious disease, we can fix that, right? Your doc can fix that. Bada bing, bada boom, right? And you're done. But that's a short-term problem. That's a now problem. It's less good at dealing with the future, whatever the future might bring. So whatever that lump might be in 5 years, right? Or whatever the state, whatever, is lurking in your blood markers, whatever that leads to down the road. They're not as concerned about that. And it's in, it's in attitudes like what you just described, right? There's an anti-test attitude, like, oh, we're not going to do a $500 test, right? We're going to let you maybe get cancer and you'll need $100,000 operation.
Yeah.
It makes no sense, right? But
No
there's
sense.
still leery, there's this cautiousness about doing the MRI. And MRI comes with some risks, right?
Of course.
Right. And CT scans, right? Any test comes with a little bit of risk, but there's definitely a bias against doing preventive testing. So like a DEXA scan, you can't get that till you're 65. But people are at, it's good to know like your body composition, right? Muscle mass, fat mass. Like people your age, people my age, we need to know that.
Mm.
And, for women, I'm in my 50s. Um, are you at risk of a fracture?
Mm.
I'd rather find that out from a DEXA scan than by breaking a bone.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And so, for the people that are listening right now, going, actually, I want to join the club of preventing future ill health, what are some basic stepping stones that they could take today or this month to start moving towards looking at their overall health?
As far as evaluating or as far as like
Yeah,
habits,
evaluating where they're at. Yeah.
I mean, a DEXA scan is a good one. Getting like a basic fitness assessment if you haven't done that, I think is a good place to start. Getting a handle on your metabolism, I think, is a really important step. So, how well does your body handle glucose, right? or carbohydrates or the food you eat? Does your blood sugar go shooting up and stay up for a while, or does it go up and then come back down like it's supposed to? So what does your sort of blood glucose profile look like? And you can go to the drugstore. I think you can do that down there, but get a glucose monitor. It's like $30, and do like some quick glucose tests, like after you eat, like when you wake up in the morning, you know,
Amazing.
do it after you eat, doing an hour after you eat, doing 2 hours after you eat, and see how it's like coming down,
And if it
or is
doesn't
it
come
staying
down,
up?
that's an issue.
Or test your A1C, right, which is another diabetes related metric of blood glycation of red blood cells, technically, um, and see where that is. Is it, you might not be in the diabetes range, but if you're anywhere close, right? The point is, if you're anywhere close to that threshold of diabetes, like, you really need to pay attention to your diet, your movement, and your sleep,
Mm.
and get yourself on a different path.
Yeah, I mean, those are simple things we can do very quickly at very low
Yeah,
cost.
yeah.
That's amazing. I love it. And this idea of metabolism, I guess as we age, our metabolism changes. And there's certain things we can do to influence our metabolism. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, again, movement, right, is a big one. Maybe changing up your diet, if you're someone who tends to have bigger bumps up in that blood glucose, maybe going away from, you know, white foods, right? Processed type foods, stuff with a lot of sugar in it, kind of basic stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get onto that this week. I want to learn more. I've never done that before, so that'll be
You know,
very
the,
interesting.
you talked about cold plunging earlier. I think maybe before we got on, started recording, but I mean, that's one thing that you know, cold plunging actually does. It does kind of ramp up your metabolism
Okay.
nicely.
And so
Yeah.
cold plunge sounds terrible for most people that are listening right
Oh,
now.
I
They're
hate
not
it.
a
Yeah.
fan, right?
Yeah. Terrible.
You hate it.
Yeah.
I love it. Do you do it
Oh,
regularly?
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I did one like a week ago. I was in
Cool.
New York. Yeah. With a sauna. So
Amazing.
I like it with a sauna. So you get good and hot in the sauna, and then you kind of like, equilibrate in the cold plunge. So then it's good. And I'll
Awesome.
always jump into some, cold body of water. I just jumped into the harbor at Liverpool a couple weeks ago.
Freezing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And
Didn't
so
stay in too long.
I bet you didn't. What's the benefit? What's the cold therapy in terms of metabolism and any other things? What does cold do to our bodies?
So cold is not great if you are like lifting weights and building strength, if you just did a strength workout, because that's going to like blunt a lot of the gains in muscle
Okay.
and in endurance. So that's sort of the caveat around cold plunging. And it's it kind of constricts, right, your circulation. It's not, so like physically it's not the greatest thing as far as like muscle, and like for athletes necessarily. The guy who came up with RICE, right? Rest, ice, compression, elevation.
Yeah.
That was like from the 70s. A few years ago, he sort of recanted the ice part.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Because he says actually, like, the ice part is bad because it blocks the inflammation that you need to create a healing response.
Hmm.
That's for athletes. But cold plunging does have, I think, great benefits for like your mental state, your alertness. Um, I think your mood. And again, not everybody is always in the mood for it, right?
Mm.
It's not a one size fits all. So if you've had a stressful day and you're already kind of like on the edge, maybe don't do it. But if you've got feel like you've got the reserve to handle it, if you're up for it, it can be good. And I say that as somebody who intensely dislikes cold water. I still feel kind of good after I get out of the thing.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And you're not doing it daily. You're doing it just regularly on
Yeah,
a weekly
whenever.
basis.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because some people get fanatic about it. Like if you're not doing it every day, it doesn't count. And I like that you've got a more of a balanced approach to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe one day I'll have one in in my yard next to the sauna. But
Jump in and out. So do you sauna regularly?
I do, but again, I don't have one because it's a big investment. But yeah, I do like whenever possible. In fact, my next book project is around this heat and cold um, thing, and how heat affects health, and how athletes use heat training to kind of like get an edge, especially with climate change and the Olympics being
Mm.
hotter and hotter.
Of course, LA coming up. I've got a few friends heading up to LA to try and retain their gold medals from
Oh,
Paris. So,
nice.
yeah, bring it on.
Yeah.
I'll tell them they
Yeah.
need to buy your book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What sports?
So one's a high jumper,
Oh, nice.
another's in slalom, kayaking.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another's a shot putter.
Great.
Yeah, and then some tennis and
Oh,
golfers as well.
okay. The Kiwis are coming for us.
Yeah, they're coming to get you.
Okay. Awesome.
No, it's good fun. So this heat and cold, it does fascinate me. So many years ago, I came across Wim Hof's work on
Mm,
breath work, and he's the Iceman, obviously. And so I went to a place in rural New Zealand that had the hot sauna and then cold plunge. And I'll be honest with you, Bill, like I don't swear a lot, but when I got into that cold plunge, I couldn't not swear from the hot to the cold. It was my reaction. I
yeah.
couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
used to it though. So, what have you learned so far? I know you're only maybe in the throes of writing it, but what are you coming up with now that you're understanding? Wow, I didn't understand heat and cold did that.
So from the athlete side, I was always somebody who hated exercising in the heat and biking or anything in hot weather. I just loathed it. And I've learned that you can really, if you can kind of get over that dislike, like I dislike the cold plunge, you can really harness heat training as almost like a force multiplier,
Hmm.
right? So, I live in Utah, so it can be 35, 40 degrees on a summer day. And, you know, so now I have no qualms about going out on a bike ride. Maybe not 40, but 35, kind of no problem. You just,
Amazing.
yeah, I have a little body temperature monitor that I use to make sure things aren't getting out of hand. But it really it sort of enhances the effect of training, any training you do. And then as you become adapted to the heat, you also become a better athlete.
So don't shy away from that. Like lean into it.
Lean into it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that was a hard thing to learn. And then, you know, using sauna, a lot of people think of that as like a Huberman type physical protocol, right? You're just doing it for the physical effects. And I've found that those are like a distant third, right? It has you could almost say a spiritual, but maybe say a psychological benefit. I just feel much more calm, even keeled
Yeah.
after a good sauna session. And again, mediated with the cold plunge, so you can go back into the sauna and go back and forth. But then also, like social. It's a big scientists have done studies of where they sort of heat people up, and they're looking into the effect of heat on depression, right? And there's some interesting literature there. But one thing that they've found is that when you warm people up like that, they get chatty.
Hmm.
They start talking. And so now there are these like social saunas that have popped up where I was in one in New York a week and a half ago, a place called Othership. This big sauna. It's like 60 people. So I was in there in a morning class, a bunch of New Yorkers, and everybody's talking to each other.
Amazing.
We're like sharing personal stories. I was like, wow.
That's so special. And when you say a classic, that hasn't really arrived in New Zealand or Australia yet, but which it will. So what does that look like? Is that for an extended period you're in the sauna, then you all go cold plunge and you come back?
Yeah, and so there's somebody who's sort of like guiding it, and there's different versions of this. There's one I went to one in Tampa, also down in Florida. But you're in this hot sauna, you're sweating your bums off, right? You're in your bathing suit with a bunch of other people, and then you just kind of get a discussion going, and There's something about it's like semi-dark and you're sweating and your defenses are down and you're not wearing a lot of clothes and nobody cares who you are or how nice your shoes are or whatever.
Mm.
It's an equalizer. And then something about the heat, I think, brings things out in people. Um,
I
you
love
know,
that.
it's lowers inhibitions, I think, is what it's
Mm.
about.
I love that part of the angle of the research because yeah, Huberman is very strong that sauna does this from a physiological standpoint. But I
Yeah,
love that you're seeing actually there's other very even more important things like the spiritual element, the connective community element, and yeah, there is the physical, but we shouldn't be just doing it for that.
yeah, it's all three. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, no, I
And
love it. I'm a convert.
so the person that's about to go to the sauna now, they've just listened to this podcast, they're on their way to give it a crack. Do you have a certain length of time that you commit to, or do you build up to that time and build your endurance, stamina?
Again, I'm not big on one blanket recommendations. Like if it's your first time, stay until you feel too hot and maybe a
Yeah,
little longer. So it's as long as you feel. At this place in New York, it was a 25-minute first session. It wasn't overly hot, but it was pretty hot. And you can depending on how high you sit, right? You can sort of regulate, so you can drop down to a lower bench that's not hot at all, or sit up at the top and it's quite hot.
amazing.
So, listen to your body and not some podcaster,
Yeah, fair.
you know?
100%. Yeah, because I mean, I've geeked out on a lot of Huberman Labs podcasts. Like, some of the stuff I've learned has been phenomenal. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's like we can listen to experts all day long, but at the end of the day, your body is just a great indicator of what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Huberman talks about 30 minutes, which is, that's a pretty solidly long session, work up to it, you
I
know?
get to 15 minutes and I don't do sauna often, but when I'm traveling for work and the hotel has a sauna, I'm in there and
Yeah.
15 minutes and I'm like, God, I got to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
there's
so if the
generally
idea of jumping in a cold lake sounds fantastic, okay, time to go do that.
yeah, 100%. I love it. And I guess for the person that don't have a cold plunge, is a cold shower equally as powerful?
Yeah. Yeah. Less pleasant.
Yeah, very much so.
The secret of the cold plunge I found is like you just gotta like you can't screw around, right? You gotta just dunk your ass in the water like as fast as possible. You can't just like inch into it. And with a cold shower, it can be hard to like yank the lever over. You've got to do it. But there was the one, most of the studies around cold plunging are small and not very good, honestly. But there was one big one that they did in the Netherlands. They've followed 3,000 people and they got them to like or they got some of them to end their shower on like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds of cold. Okay. So that's a really big study. And, what did they find? The biggest effect that they found was that the people who ended on the cold, they missed less work.
Interesting.
They missed like a third less work days.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really big.
God, every
Um,
employer should be encouraging that.
yeah. And then a huge, like most of them, the study was 30 days. Most of them continued with the cold after the researchers were like, no, okay, you can stop. They're like, no, we're going to keep doing it. So
Interesting.
they
They
kept
love it.
doing it. So there's something about it that I think it's like an adrenaline thing. It's kind of dope. It's kind of addictive.
Yeah, I think there's a dopamine connection there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And in terms of, I'm just going to lift the book up for those that are watching online. So, Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia and Bill Gifford. Amazing book, a game changing book. Look, is there anything in there about stress, the impact of stress on our longevity and our health span?
Yeah. Not enough, actually, in my opinion. Like, I feel like, the book has been out for 2 years and, I'm kind of thinking about like, what would we do differently? And I think paying more attention to the effect of stress on our health. In my own life, my my partner had a very stressful job, right, during the period when I was busy writing the book. And then kind of at the end of it, she ended up with, a case of breast cancer.
Wow.
right? That we both think was completely related to being in that stressful situation for several, several years.
Yeah.
So I think more attention needs to be paid to that. And, a lot of people pay lip service to stress. It's hard to, it looks different for everybody, obviously, and it's hard to figure out how to address that. I mean, the one reason I started going to sauna, A, we had a freezing cold winter, and two, stress was a big reason.
Yeah.
So finding a way to manage stress, we have a really powerful chapter in Outlive, the last chapter of the book, which is it's really about mental health, but it's really about some challenges that Peter went through that were partly related to stress.
And with stress mitigation, I guess that's personal and it's for everyone, it's different. For some, it's exercise will mitigate it. It could be mindfulness. For you, it's hot therapy. Any other modalities that you and Peter have came across that are very helpful to de-stress?
I mean, we're very different. Very different people. I when we started working together, he was very sort of optimized and very sort of, I don't know, rigid about stuff, like his sort of physical, his workout and his habits. I think you need to add some fun to this, right? You need to have more fun. So like he went skiing, tried that, but I think the thing he settled on that he seems to like is rucking.
Yeah, yeah, carrying heavy
Right.
stuff and
Yeah, yeah. So it's like a walk again, back to walking, but you're carrying some weight. And so that's his idea of fun. That's his way of having one way of
I love
having
that.
relieving stress, getting out of the house, all that kind of stuff. For me, I like um, I like yoga, certain types of yoga. Um, and in fact, I live in Utah, so I do a lot of I ski a lot. I ride a mountain bike a lot. Those are fairly intense, you know, scary pursuits,
Yeah,
and leaves you with a lot of tightness. So I like a good sort of restorative yoga class, right, to kind of balance that out. And that
beautiful.
also helps deal with stress, right?
Of course. Yeah, it down regulates that whole nervous
Yeah.
system. And I guess before we wrap up, again, I just want to mention to everyone, please go and buy a copy of Outlive. It is a chunky book. And you can see in there, I've got all my little notes that I've made. It's a brilliant book. And I think that all of us need to have the know-how to manage our health span, our lifespan. This is the answer to it. And if you don't like reading, get the audio version. So I'll put the link in the show notes for everyone to go and get that. I'll also put any other links, Bill, for them to get in touch with you. Do you have a website that you'd like us to pop in there?
My website, it's a little dysfunctional. I did write a previous book about longevity. This is how Peter and I got together. It's called Spring Chicken:
Okay, awesome.
Stay Young Forever or Die Trying.
I need to get a copy of that today. I'll
Yeah,
put a link
here,
in
I
the
actually
show notes
have
as
it
well.
right here. I don't know if it's coming up
Oh, there we
backwards or
go.
not.
That's an epic cover.
It is an epic cover.
I love that.
They both have epic covers.
Oh, I agree. 100%. And
Yeah.
I'll put that in the show notes as well, 100% of the time.
What's interesting, so that book, Spring Chicken, came out 10 years ago. It has a lot of the same stuff that we've been talking about: exercise, nutrition, cold water, um, all that kind of stuff, Healthspan, centenarians. Um, but back then it was sort of like a niche subject,
Mm.
health and longevity. And now it's become this kind of overwhelming global movement
Yeah.
or obsession. Like I've done talks around the world about this book, and people are just on fire. And I'm not sure I quite understand why.
I think it's our need for survival, our need to want to stay here on this planet longer and see, like me, for me, great grandkids.
Yeah, yeah,
The fear also, there's a lot of fear, like the fear of ill health, the fear of losing our mental marbles.
yeah.
So I think that this is a real timely book for both your book and the one that you co-authored with Dr. Peter Attia. We need it.
I feel like COVID really drove a lot of those things home.
100%. No, I
Yeah.
have to Fully agree with that. And Bill, one last question. I'd like to ask you to consider just us to move forward many, many years into the future. We're going to pretend that we're 40, 50 years ahead, and you're highly aware that it's your last day on Earth. Someone very young that you love dearly comes into the room and says, Bill, how do I lead my life on purpose? What would you say to them?
I think it comes down to having some kind of physical practice that keeps your body, but also your mind in good working order. I just get, I just kind of accidentally, I was never a great athlete, but I kind of accidentally got into a mode where exercise became part of my life. I raced bikes. I wasn't very good, but that was a part of my life for a while. Skiing was a part of my life for a while. And a lot of the successful people that I'm meeting now, the people in their 50s, 60s, they have something like that. It could be tennis, right? It could be riding the bike. It could be, could be even running or some, they've some kind of like physical practice that adds structure and discipline
Mm.
um, to their lives. Like I learned a tremendous amount just training to be a mediocre bike racer. I learned a huge amount though about that helped me in my work. Like it helped. I couldn't have written Outlive if I hadn't been an extremely slow bike racer in my 20s and 30s. Does that make sense?
100%. You learned the discipline, you learned the structure.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mm.
you almost have to like, and this is a line we use in the book, but think of yourself as like an athlete of life, right? So that means you're exercising with you're not just exercising to stay in shape, like you have a goal, right? So sign up for something that's going to push you and make you adopt those habits, that discipline, that kind of like that drivenness for a goal, right?
Mm. I
So
love
that's what I
that.
would say.
That's seriously powerful. And again, just I think that for people to be able to adopt that, we can all do what you've just said. We can all find that. We can all commit to that. And if we don't like it, we can try something new, but actually having a physical ritual that grounds us in discipline, connection, community.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I think
Really,
that's
really.
extremely powerful, way beyond any. It'll benefit your physical health and your health span, of course, but I feel like it also gives you like the ability to stick to it, just stick to something and
Yeah. Yeah, that commitment.
achieve your goals. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I get it. And Bill, just before we wrap up as well, you mentioned you do speak around the world. So if anyone's listening right now that goes, hey, we've got a conference coming up, we'd like you to come speak, are you open to that?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
I'm findable on LinkedIn and Twitter.
We will
You want
put
to see
both
pictures
those.
of me skiing? It's on there. Those are on Instagram.
I love it. I'll put all of your social handles in the show notes so people can go and
Sure.
follow you. They can stay tuned for that new book coming out.
Yeah.
And as I say, the existing books that you have already written, there'll be links in there for everyone to get those too. This episode was for people that are interested in health span and a longer, stronger life. Bill, you're a world leader at what you do. So I just want to say a heartfelt thanks for taking the time to share your
Oh,
wisdom.
thanks for having me on. It's really a pleasure to talk to you.